will also tell you one more fact about snow in the state of Maryland. Typically, snow doesn't come until after the turn of the new year. Now, Western Maryland may see a snowfall here and there, but typically what we see for the rest of the state is snow usually doesn't come until January or February. Hey, Melanie Montague here, living in Maryland with Montague Properties. This is the YouTube page that you've been looking for. If this is your first time here, please subscribe to the page, hit the bell button, so anytime anything's posted, you are notified. We do post every single week, and we do talk to people like you every single day about Maryland, about buying homes and selling homes here, and wanted to bring to you all about snow today. So let's not delay, let's get right to it. All right, so let's talk about snow in Maryland. So Maryland is the shape of a gun. If you look at it, it's kind of like, really kind of like this. It's this way. And so up here is Western Maryland. Then you got Northern Maryland. You come down to Southern Maryland, and it kind of goes around and touches Washington, D.C. So it's an interesting shape. It's not very big. Yet at the same time, there are so many different elements that affect snow in the state of Maryland every single year. So let's go ahead and let's get started about Western Maryland. Western Northern Maryland is interesting. So it touches the borders of Pennsylvania and also West Virginia, and also a little bit of regular Virginia. When I say regular, I mean not West, so just regular Virginia. And what happens is that starts to get into some mountains and hills. If you're from Colorado, you would call them hills. If you're from Maryland, you call them mountains. And so it's much colder over there in the wintertime. So what ends up happening is that these clouds come in and it dumps some snow. Now, Maryland doesn't have any skiing that I'm aware of, and I'm a native of Maryland. Yet, for a short drive north into Pennsylvania or west into West Virginia, there definitely are tons and tons of ski resorts that you can go to. But we're not talking about that today. We're talking about Maryland and Western Maryland, Allegheny County, Garrett County. It snows up there very often, and they are used to it in the winter time. So if you're looking for a place that gets snow in Maryland on a regular basis during the winter months, you may want to consider Western Maryland. Definitely gets snow. So north of Baltimore, and Baltimore kind of gets some snow sometimes. It just depends. That northern area, what happens is the weather comes from the west, it works its way across the United States and then heads up. So it kind of comes from lower Virginia and then works its way and kind of skirts up through Washington, D.C. and then up to northern Maryland. So that northern county area above Baltimore often does get weather as well. Not as much as Western Maryland, but definitely gets snow, and they see snow more often than you would in Central Maryland or Southern Maryland. Let's talk about Central Maryland and snow. So talked a little bit about it. So it's a mix there, right? Oftentimes it's on that line, snow, ice mix. So we'll get some ice, get some snow, and sometimes even rain. It just depends on however that storm's coming across. There are no mountains through the state of Maryland to stop those clouds to allow it just to dump a bunch of snow, except for Northern Maryland and Western Maryland. So Central Maryland, we're talking about, Montgomery County, some parts of Prince George's County, Howard County. There will be some snow accumulation over there. And even Anne Arundel County, as it kind of goes up, it skirts along there, the Annapolis area and up. It does snow more often there than it would in Southern Maryland. Now let's talk a little bit about Southern Maryland. So Southern Maryland is the southernmost part of Maryland. And what happens, it's surrounded by a lot of water. You've got the Chesapeake Bay, the Potomac River, the Patuxent River, the Wacomico River. And as we know, and if you don't know, that brings in a lot of different winds, different directions, warmth off the water or cold off the water. Depends on how a storm's coming in. So it just kind of depends. And what typically happens as that storm comes across Virginia and comes upward, what ends up happening is Southern Maryland just gets missed, really just gets missed. Usually it's just rain. Sometimes we get the snow, but I will tell you that Southern Maryland does get snow. When Southern Maryland gets snow is when a storm comes from the south. So not from the west, comes from the south, comes up that coastline, and it's just picking up moisture and more moisture and more moisture, what happens typically in that situation is southern Maryland gets dumped on and gets a ton of snow. And we saw that happen last year. Last year in January, on the 3rd of 2022, there was so much snow in southern Maryland that things were shut down for quite some time. All right, so let's continue this onto the eastern shore. So the eastern shore of Maryland is between the Chesapeake Bay and the Atlantic Ocean. And so when we're talking about that, again, there's so many storm patterns that come through there, lots and lots of winds, warmth off the water. So it's also equally kind of similar to southern Maryland. It will get snow, but it doesn't get hit as hard as, say, western Maryland or northern Maryland or even central Maryland when it comes to snow. So now let's get into some pros and cons of snow in the state of Maryland. All right, some pros for kids for Maryland. They talk about snow. They see a flake, they shut the schools down. It's a little bit insane. It can be a con for the parents. Definitely a con for the parents, because if you're working, you've got to drive into work and then there's no snow and your kid gets a free day off. That's a problem. But for the kids, they stinking love it. Another pro for getting snow is that we don't get that much snow. So the times we do get to see it, it is 4 seasons. You do get to see snow. It is pleasurable. You can see some out my window right now. It is beautiful. It is definitely a pro of having snow. Now let's talk about the cons of snow, besides the fact that schools shut down. In Western Maryland, they probably don't shut down as much as they do in Southern Maryland or even Central Maryland. Yet here's what happens. So here's a con. Nobody can stink and drive in it. It's not terrible, but what is Maryland? Maryland is so many transplants from all over this country and the world that it is just like a hodgepodge of people. And that is fantastic, but when it comes to snow, it stinks. It really stinks. So we are told to stay home when it snows because people just can't drive. Most people are a nuisance on the road. Now, people who've lived in Maryland or been around snow, great drivers in snow, great drivers. It's the people who don't know how to drive in snow are also the same people are the ones complaining to the school system when they hear of snow. I shouldn't say that. Shut it down. I don't want to say complaining. It's out of concern for the kids and the buses. And so I don't disagree with it, yet we see it happen all the time. And it is a bit frustrating when spring break and or summer break can't happen on time because we've used up all the snow days for no snow. So some things to consider moving to Maryland about snow. If you want snow and you want it more often, go north and go west. If you want less snow less often, go south and east. And if you kind of want to mix in the middle, go central Maryland, because you might just see that a little more often than you would and you get a good mix. Just be prepared that if there is snow forecasted, it's a possibility that the schools will either have a delay or shut down for the day. So if you are a working parent and need to drive into the city or somewhere to your job, you might just have to stay home. Also, don't book your first vacation for summer at the very end of school, because oftentimes snow days are used up and the school year needs to be extended a day or two because they have to make up those days that were missed during the snow season. Go ahead and get yourself a sled or a saucer or a sleigh, whatever you want to call it, because when it does snow, trust me, you're not going to find one anywhere because people are going to run to the stores, buy it. Get yourself some snow boots and have them ready, because we never know exactly when it's going to happen. They say it's going to happen, and depending on where you're living in the state, you never know. So you have those things readily available. The other thing is you want to make sure that you have in your car a blanket, some snacks, and a bottle of water or 2, just in case you get stuck in the snow because you're not from Maryland or somewhere that snows and know how to drive in the snow, or you just run off the road because it's slick. It happens to the best of us. And I will also tell you one more fact about snow in the state of Maryland. Typically, snow doesn't come until after the turn of the new year. Now, Western Maryland may see a snowfall here and there, but typically what we see for the rest of the state is snow usually doesn't come until January or February. And I will tell you, it is notorious that in March we get 4 forecasted a snowstorm. I think we've had it as late as March 22nd before, and it actually snowed. But typically what happens in that situation is it's warm enough at that point in time. It snows for that day, a couple inches. By the time the next day comes, it's all melted or mostly melted because it's just too warm to stay. All right, so that is it about snow in the state of Maryland. So if you're thinking about moving to the state of Maryland, here's some great information about snow, because we are a 4 seasons state. And so therefore you want to make sure if you like snow or if you don't like snow, you know where to go. All right, till next time, please follow my page, subscribe, hit the bell for new notifications, and follow us on our other social media sites. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.